And welcome back to the Cooler Jets podcast. Rose Ben Blessington and Michael Nania. Well, Michael, the Jets did it. Pulled off the upset. First win over the Eagles in franchise history. Get to 3-3 at the bye, which a lot of people are saying was kind of what you were hoping for with Aaron Rodgers. The Jets did it without Rodgers. Quite the game. From the get-go, I always felt this was the Jets' toughest matchup of the season. And for the defense to play as well as it did, for Zach Wilson to manage the game the way that he did, and for the coaching staff really is who deserves a ton of credit to pull through with the late injury to Sauce Gardner, which we didn't even talk about in the preview podcast. A ton to get to in this game. But Michael, let's just start here. How good does it feel to be enjoying yet again 2 years in a row the Jets win a game, and then we just get to soak it in for 2 straight weeks as they enter the bye?
It feels great. And this is such an awesome win for the morale. I mean, the difference between where we're at right now and where they would have been if they lost is so huge. And, let's not say the season would be over or anything like that, but the difference between 2-4 going into the bye with, another, moral victory, like, oh, we played a good team really close and all that, versus 3-3 now, and you've got 2 really quality wins under your belt. You've won 2 games in a row now. The offense is starting to, I was going to say get it together, but now there's a lot to work on. But Zach Wilson is showing some very reasonable progress over the past 3 games. The defense is getting back to being the dominant unit that it was last year, playing great against great teams. So, yeah, it's a tremendous, tremendous win for the vibes and the morale going into the bye.
Yeah, and for those watching a video, Michael, you mind just moving to the side so we can see your background?
Oh, yeah.
So wisely.
This background.
Oh, thank you. Those tears are so nice. For those listening, it's the photo of that poor Eagles kid. You know what?
Crying Eagles fan.
I relate to that.
We revel in this because I immediately thought of that Bills fan who was sitting behind us.
Oh, yeah.
At the season opener, the one that
I
you
shook his hand. I didn't. He was just all right. He was screaming, celebrating during Rodgers' injury, so I was getting a little annoyed. We kept her cool. It was a kid. I did make an ass of myself, but yes. Then he was crying after the game, and I was like, oh man. I used to cry after games too when I was a kid. But this poor Eagles. I'm like, dude, you're 5-1. Like, they're gonna be right in the thick of things. We have a lot more to cry because again, Michael. The Jets get a win. And then another stud player is going on IR, presumably, with Joe Tippmann. We'll see. They said it's a thigh injury. You worry about a torn quad. You tweeted out the video. Again, it looks like the MetLife turf monster got somebody. It could be a groin. I mean, they said it's thigh. I mean, like I remember Abanikanda had the thigh in preseason. It was just like a bruise, and then he was fine like 2 weeks later. So unless we have another surprise announcement like last week's pod with AVT, I don't think we'll have anything new on that by the time you're listening to this, but let's just hope it's nothing bad and that he's able to come back in those first few weeks after the bye. But let's just talk about the good stuff for now, Michael. I don't know where you want to start. I like starting with Zach Wilson because that always seems to be what the main focus is on, the quarterback, but I think it's the defense that really deserves
all defense today. I mean, we could start the defensive side because, I mean, when I went back and started rewatching this game, it was all defense for me. I barely looked at the offense. I mean, I did look at it.
Let's put aside the offense. Let's put aside the defense. Let's talk about coaching because Michael, this game.
For a second, I thought you were going to say, let's talk about special teams.
Let's talk about the uniforms. No, they wore green and white at home. Thank God. The Jets outcoached the Super Bowl team. It's as simple as that. The Jets outcoached the Eagles. I mean, they obviously players deserve plenty of credit. They made some big time plays, but specifically on the defensive side of the ball, because offensively they sputtered in the red zone, although they did move the ball. But on the defensive side of the ball, the in-game adjustments, yet again, a second half shutout against a team that was NFC champion, was in the Super Bowl, will be making a deep playoff run again this year. A great team. If you were to tell me before the game that the Jets would dominate in the trenches, would have lockdown coverage without Sauce Gardner or DJ Reed, it just seems like Ulbrich had a great sense of things on when to call the blitz, what coverage to call. The Jets seemed to constantly be in the best coverage possible for what the Eagles were running, and that's a credit to coaching. That's a credit to game planning. I was worried because of the heavy rotation. I mean, they're playing Craig James and what's his first name? Something Hayes. That's how little we knew of this guy. Camonte? Is it Camonte Hayes?
Tay Hayes, right? Yeah.
Tay Hayes. Look at that. He got elevated on Saturday, and I looked it up. I was like, who the hell is this guy? And I saw he was 5'9".
When I saw him in the game for the first time, I was like, I messaged you. I said, who is this? So great
And
research.
I saw he was a
preparation
5'9".
on our part.
I saw he was a 5'9"
Professional
corner.
podcasters.
I know. Well, to be fair, he didn't play with. Where was he during the offseason? Because he wasn't on the team for preseason. Do you know?
I looked at it after. He was with multiple different teams, but the Jets obviously just signed him like 10 days ago.
I saw that he was 5'9", and I was like, all right, well, he's a backup nickel, so they're going to give Carter some more outside reps, which they did do, although he was back on the slot when they went to their nickel defense. Credit to those guys stepping up. It was I mean, honestly, I didn't know what to expect from this game. We said it when Saleh got hired in 2021 that this defense, and this is part of the reason we didn't expect them to draft Sauce Gardner, was this defense can run without great corners. You see how elevated it gets with elite level cornerback play. But we knew watching Saleh in San Francisco, especially that 2020 year where they survived a ton of injuries and had a bunch of no names playing, that if the defensive line is able to get some pressure, you can win with this heavy zone looks that the Jets are giving with backup practice squad corners. Although I do think they deserve some props and made some nice plays. But Michael, let's start with the coaching staff, because I think Saleh gets criticized a ton. Some of it I think is unfair. Some of it is fair. But this is for, as clear as it gets, a coaching victory for the Jets. It doesn't happen too often, but the Jets outcoached a team, and not just any team, one of the best teams in the entire league. So let's start with that. How do you feel about Saleh and company?
100%. This is a really good example of a game where the coaching staff deserves a lot of credit, like you said, because the Jets were depleted in this game. They had a lot of talent deficiencies they had to work around. And, the Eagles were missing a lot of people too, but specifically looking at the defense.
Yeah, they say that. We were down QB 1, right guard 1, right tackle 1, cornerback 1, 2, and 4, and 5. Come on.
Yeah. So, I mean, specifically on defense, going in, I thought this was going to be a shootout. I thought the Jets defense, especially after Sauce went out, which when we recorded the preview, we didn't even know that. But you throw that in, I thought it was a really bad matchup for the defense. And we've talked about it. We talked about it when the schedule came out this year, that the Eagles are maybe the worst matchup on the schedule, because teams that have a great O-line that can quiet this pass rush, that's a tough matchup, because the Jets want to win with 4. They win with 4 pass rushers. Mobile QB as well, another thing they struggle with. And they don't play a lot of games defensively. So if they can't straight up beat you with talent, that's the toughest matchup they could face. And the Eagles have great receivers, they have a great quarterback, they have a great O-line. So you take out the Jets corners that can allow them to go toe-to-toe with their receivers. It was a really bad matchup. So I thought they were going to put up a lot of points. And then I like the Jets offense, their matchup against the Eagles defense, especially with some of the losses that they had. So I thought this was going to be a shootout, but the Jets defense, you have to give Jeff Ulbrich credit. And the head coach talk is starting to pick up. I think it's legit. I think he's really going to be in that mix if he wants to be. And this is going to be one of the games you point to as to why, because everyone who had to step up and play in this game defensively was ready, whether it was Craig James, who didn't allow a catch in this game, had a big end zone pass deflection, whether it was Bryce Hall for the second straight game, Tay Hayes coming off the street, and he did give up some catches, but even the one he gave up to Brown on the sideline you can't really cover that much more tightly than that, unless you're a 6'3" Sauce Gardner, and you would have just a more natural length, but he covered that about as well as he could, but they were ready to play, and everyone knew their assignments. The Jets were very zone heavy in this game, even more so than they usually are, especially compared to last week, because
makes sense.
With Sauce last week, second half they ran more QB spy to stop Russell Wilson. They played because they trusted their man coverage, and they really blocked up when they played man coverage, and that's why they were able to have a better second half against the Broncos. But in this game, you lose Sauce, you lose Reed, you can't play man coverage against A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. They play a lot of zone, but obviously the risk of that is you think like, okay, now they're just going to dink and dunk on us the whole day. But they didn't do that because the communication and the chemistry and just passing stuff off, everyone being in the right place, was so on point the whole game, which you don't expect from a patchwork secondary with 2 practice squad guys in there, a backup. But it was, and that's undrafted free agent staff. Undrafted free agent safety. So like everyone in the mix who had to play in this game knew their assignments. They passed things off great. Ulbrich had the right play calls. to stop Philly's coverages. And I feel like Philly, they really tried to exploit the losses in the Jets secondary. They were way more pass heavy than they usually are, and
Yeah.
they didn't have to be.
I know
They
the
were
injury
leading,
kind of worked to their advantage a little bit in the sense that the Eagles, I
took
wonder
them
if
out of
Sauce,
their ways,
well, and if Sauce and
their
DJ were
usual.
healthy, maybe they would have tried to be more aggressive with their running. But the Jets are the answer for the running for their rushing attack. I mean, or I think it was Chris Sims was talking about how they just loaded the box a ton and gave negative run looks, and so either Hurts is checking it into a pass play or it's just designed a pass play. And a lot of times those guys drop back into coverage. But if not, I mean, they were aggressive in filling those gaps. Quincy Williams has made that huge leap, and him and Mosley are great run defenders. I think Jermaine Johnson deserves a ton of credit too. He's really come on strong. I mean, we know the type of run defender that he is, but the last 2 weeks he's been wrecking havoc as a pass rusher. Your guy, Bryce Huff, you've been calling for it for like 3 years now, is finally getting, I guess 2 years, is getting, what, I think he had 50% snap share?
Yep, 50%.
Highest of his career. So what do you kind of make of some of the adjustments that they made in terms of their rotation? Some of it was just by injury, but it seems like the defensive line rotation, they've really made some changes the last few weeks.
Well, yeah, and to go off what you said about, maybe the injuries changed the Eagles' plan, I think it did kind of work to their advantage because the Eagles' run game is what they thrive on, and obviously they can throw the ball, but it's based off the run game first. They're one of the few teams I would call a run-first team, but in this game, Hurts throws 45 times with 2 sacks, and they only had, if you're talking about only carries to the running backs, they only had 14. Obviously, they had a few Hurts runs in there, but there was no need for them to do that leading the whole game. But they wanted to exploit the Jets, and the Jets had the answers to it. And one thing that did definitely affect this game was Lane Johnson going out in the first quarter, first drive of the game. Undoubtedly had a huge effect because Jack Driscoll came in after that. Bryce Huff beat him up the whole game, and Bryce Huff is great, but I'm assuming if Lane Johnson were in there, it would probably be a little bit less at least. So that was definitely impactful, but the pass rush came to play. Huff had another amazing game. Jermaine Johnson now has had 2 great games in a row. I mean, forcing 2 interceptions in this game with a QB hit, forcing the pop up to Bryce Hall, and then sniffing out that screen. That was an incredible play.
Oh
I
my
mean,
God.
you rewatch that and how quickly he decides to pull out of that rush, go to the opposite side of the defensive line, run past 3 offensive linemen to go make the hit on that screen and pop it up for Quinn to pick it off is insane. And I think that was just pure film study because
That's one of the
he
better
doesn't.
defensive plays I've ever seen. Is that hyperbole?
Yeah, I mean, I no, because like you look at it again, like it's so quick. He immediately knows to go over there. There's nothing he sees that could tip it off because the moment he decides to make that pursuit, it looks like a normal pass play because obviously at some point the offensive linemen are going to let the rushers in and they're going to start leaking out to block. But at the moment he does it, they hadn't done that yet. I think it is 1,000%. He saw the look and the alignment, the formation. He considered the personnel, down distance, all that stuff. And he said, I know it's coming here. And I look back at previous tight end screens the Eagles have thrown this season to see if there was anything like that could have tipped them off. And they did run pretty much the exact same play. There are some slight differences, but ultimately the exact same play against the Bucs in week 3, a screen to Dallas Goedert with many things that could have tipped him off. Same personnel, alignment, part of the field, distance to go. And I really think it's just him knowing what's coming based on film study. So Jermaine Johnson, these last 2 games, really standing out and just showing the damage that he could do, even if he isn't the most polished pass rusher of all time to the extent of a Bryce Huff, but just with his pure motor, he's getting there though. That is the thing. We're seeing more of it these past 2 games. I mean, the hit he had to force the Bryce Hall interception, he went for the cross chop, didn't really hit it, but then he throws in a hump move, stops his momentum, throws the lineman, spins him around, and got in there. So he's starting to put a little bit more finesse in there. But even if that's not like tip top, just with his length, his motor, his speed, and the instincts that he showed with the screenplay, he's just a playmaker all over the field from that edge position. So he's been great these last 2 games. Quinnen, I don't care that he is half sacked this year. He's even more dominant than last year in terms of how consistently he's getting pressure, and he had some big pressures in this game. So really the whole pass rush stepped up, and that's what they needed. And, maybe Lane Johnson getting hurt is a part of it, but the Eagles still have a bunch of other studs in that offensive line who they were beating up the entire game. So they needed a huge game from the pass rush to overcome those secondary injuries, and they absolutely got it. And then you couple that with the back end, just how disciplined and sound they were, how prepared they were because of the coaching, and then credit to the players, of course, as well for being ready and putting in the work and the preparation. It was just a masterclass of defense in this game in every sense.
Yeah, I mean, look, we've been high on this Joe Douglas, Robert Saleh era of football, and look, I mean, the it's not like the numbers are amazing with Joe Douglas as a GM or Robert Saleh as a head coach. They've lost plenty of games. They've made some bad decisions. It's not perfect. It's undeniable that this era of Jets football is better than the last, and the last few ones up until probably the Rex years.
Yeah.
I mean, there are plenty of things to criticize, but the last 2 years of Jets football have been more fun than every other Jets season since 2010. I know, low bar. But I think that the Jets coaches and personnel, and honestly, all the way up to ownership outside of this turf debacle we'll get into, I guess, later in this podcast. But the transformation that this team has made over the last 3 years is unreal. And I think Saleh's coaching staff just deserves, we don't talk about it enough, but their ability to develop talent is different than anything we saw under Rex, under Bowles, under Gase. But you look at like that 2020 draft class from Douglas is a good example, which isn't a great class. They had some misses. This was the last draft class of Adam Gase. But you look at guys like Bryce Hall, look at guys like Becton, hell, even Ashton Davis, talented players that probably fell out of favor with this coaching staff have been developed this season, and they're making an impact. I mean, especially Becton looks like a stud left tackle. Obviously, the health is always going to be the big concern with him. That he was kind of already like he was already a player as a rookie, but they deserve credit for how they've developed in the last 2 years and getting him to focus more on his body and his rehab and the shape that he's put himself in. Obviously, Becton deserves a lot of credit there too. But Bryce Hall, as Saleh said, is a guy who was a starter, lost his job. The organization goes out and pays DJ Reed and drafts Sauce Gardner in the top 5 of the draft. He loses his job, sits on the bench the entire year last year, but he found a role for himself on special teams. He's stayed consistent with his work, and he's ready. When his number was called, he's risen to the occasion. And then there are guys like Quincy Williams that they've developed, Tony Adams, an undrafted free agent that they've developed, Bryce Huff that they've developed, John Franklin Myers that they've developed. I mean, this coaching staff has really done a nice job of developing young, talented athletes. The personnel department does a good job of finding these guys that have the traits that they're looking for. Clearly, this Jets defense has prioritized length and speed and power. And this coaching staff, between Tony Odom, Ruddy, the linebackers coach, White Cotton, the defensive line coach, Ulbrich, Saleh, all those guys on the defensive side of the football just deserve their flowers. And I think this game was a one that really highlighted it. So I just wanted to make sure we talked about kind of their development the last few years. I don't want to get to the offense just yet. I know there's plenty to talk about with the offense. Oh, you know what? I guess just because I alluded to it, what are we going to do about this turf? It's giving me a heartache or a heart attack every time I'm watching a game. I thought Garrett was going to blow out his you-know-what when they showed the replay. And I was like, are you freaking kidding me?
I thought he was done.
I thought he was done too. Quincy Williams went out of the game earlier with the knee that's kind of been bothering him all season, although he returned. Tippmann did suffer something relatively serious because of the turf. And I don't want to spend too much time on it because I don't know how much they can really do during the season. I don't think they can really make any changes. But it's just, honestly, I guess there is nothing else to say outside of, I guess that's just failure on the ownership. It's failure on the Giants ownership. I was reading that they did try to have grass earlier. I don't know if that was the old stadium or the beginning of this stadium, but they've had issues with the plumbing and the drainage because they're in a swamp, and God, who knows what it is, but they have to fix it because I think it's probably fine dry, but all the major injuries we've seen have come when the turf gets wet, and it's rained every single home game this year outside of the Chiefs game. We've really seen it pop up. So I don't know if you have anything on that. I just figured we never talk about the turf, but it is kind of a big storyline this year.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to find something to say because, what suggestion do we have to make it better? The only thing we could say is make the observation that it's an issue that needs to be addressed, because especially this Tippmann one, I think is interesting. And you let me know if you agree on this, but I think the fact that it happens right on the logo, because if you look at it, it's like the first or second step as he's dropping back into his set on the logo where it just kind of gives out on him. You could tell he reacts and he goes down and grabs his quad or his thigh. I think that's kind of, troubling because, that's a part of the field that,
It's a
might
big part of the
be
field.
changed more frequently than other parts of the field, maybe be more liable to having an issue like that. Like, don't you agree? The fact that it's on the logo.
So different. The turf is different than last year in the fact that it's like the end zones aren't just individual pieces that they rip out. All of it's paint from the logo to the end zones. It's just paint. They're not taking parts of the field out anymore. And so that's why they were able to do the midfield logo. It's the same thing that the Chargers and Rams do. They have like some sort of chemical solution, and then they have like a scrubber, and they just clears the paint right off, and then they repaint it. But I agree with you. I mean, the logo is big. It's right in the middle of the field. I think Lane Johnson's injury was on the logo too. Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a nightmare every time they play here, especially when it rains. I'm just like, oh God, please, nobody get injured. Like you said, there's nothing really we can say about it, so I don't want to spend too much time on the negative, but they have to make a change this offseason. And then, of course, they'll put in grass, and it'll be a disaster, and it'll be even worse. So there's always something to complain about. But regardless, the Jets have another win and yet another serious injury, and this time again from the MetLife turf. Although I guess AVT's injury was grass. I mean, injury is just part of the game. I think, again, tying that back in with the earlier point, coaching staff deserves a lot of credit for the mentality that they've instilled in this team. I mean, this team clearly knows how to respond to adversity. I mean, from the first series of their first game, I mean, I do think back to Salah's Hard Knock speech talking about how it's like climbing Mount Everest. Like, we made it to base camp, but it's going to get really effing hard from here on out. And boy, was he right. And this team knows how to respond when they get punched in the mouth. I mean, I think that's just a direct credit to coaching. I mean, I know you were talking about how like the players sound kind of angry on Twitter, and they clearly have this mentality of us versus everybody, and it's working. It's working. And I do think back to Mosley talking about the last time the Jets played the Eagles in 2021, how they did not respect the Jets. They were, basically treating the Jets like an XFL team, and how that really got into Mosley's skin. I remember reading that 2 years ago, and then I think Rosenblatt brought it back up for this game. But the Jets were talking their shit in this game. I mean, you look at Breece Hall, he ran angry towards that entire second half. He was angry, and he played like it. And the whole defense plays like it. Quincy Williams just flying around, and that uppercut, God, I'm worried about him throwing out his arm doing it. Honestly, all the celebrations, because even on the near pick six by Tony Adams, if you watch Mosley and Quinnen go run and to celebrate with him, I love the energy, love the enthusiasm. It's all Hackett's thing, like, got to celebrate with our teammates. But Mosley steps on Quinnen's cleat and they both fall over. And I'm like, can you imagine if we were celebrating the game-changing pick and we lose two of our defensive captains like that? So maybe cool it on these celebrations just a little bit. But I guess it's just kind of a culture question. We can dive into the offense, and I'm sure other stuff will come up. But just in terms of their ability to develop, their ability to respond to adversity, the game planning, this to me was the premier Robert Saleh, Joe Douglas game so far. I guess also Joe Douglas beating his former team. I didn't even think about that. So Last thing on the coaching and GM, and then we'll move to the offense.
Yeah, I mean, with the celebrations, I definitely noticed that. I think, I know Hackett promotes celebrations too. Like, let's just be safe with our celebrations as much as we can.
Yeah, you didn't like Becton pointing in the middle of the play either. I like
that was interesting. I think it's cool. I like the confidence for sure. I think that's a big takeaway. And I know, like you said, that's probably one of the best things that Hackett has done is kind of instill some confidence back in some of these guys who really need it. I think you could see that. So that's good.
Sure,
but
with Zach.
I don't know, pointing in the middle of the play, like the play is still going on, like just finish the play. I don't know. That's nitpicking
like Hackett. So not to cut you off, but like Hackett deserves, and we're going to get into it in a second, plenty of criticism for some of the red zone play calling, but he clearly relates to the players a lot better. And you could tell that. I don't think we brought it up, but when him and Becton were running off the field last week, and you just see how energized Becton looked, like he's clearly a coach that has reached Becton and Becton might even credit for helping him turn back into the player that he knows he is. And Zach Wilson, same thing. I mean, even when he ran out of the tunnel for this game, maybe we're reading into too much, but I could just see he seems a lot more confident. He seems like he's back to having fun. It doesn't seem as serious for him. He's smiling, and look, small things. He could throw 3 interceptions and we could all be panning him again. But I do think Hackett deserves credit for building up some of these players' mental and their confidence, because this is a tough market to play. And clearly last year, some guys mentally let it get to them.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think with Mike LaFleur, that was one of the bigger issues. There, you didn't really get that relatability factor with him. So, maybe he was a good schemer. I think in some ways he was over criticized because of the bad quarterbacking and personnel issues. Like, there were a lot of plays last year that should have been made that were schemed well. So, but I think it's a lot more than that when it comes to coaching, especially when you're one of the higher level coaches, like an offensive coordinator. It's important to be able to have that connection with the players to be able to communicate the information so they can execute it well. So I think that contributes to the execution level is how well can you connect with the players and teach that information. And I think Hackett has done a nice job of that. But at the same time, when we get into the offense, there are still some
let's do it.
things that need to be ironed out. But I do have a couple more things to say about the defense.
Okay.
Before we get into the offense, give a little bit more credit to them. But let's talk about these linebackers. I mean, best linebacker duo in the league. I think it's pretty fair to say that at this point.
Definitely.
Right?
I think Quincy right now, no Milano because he's injured. I'd still probably give Fred Warner the top spot just because he's been doing it for so long and he's having a great year. But I think Quincy's an all-pro linebacker. I think he's number 2 in the league right now. And then Mosley, maybe has some limitations in coverage and athleticism, but he's clearly the smartest guy on the field and does a lot in terms of helping the Jets get lined up, recognizing stuff he sees on film. He's a leader. I agree. I think the best linebacking duo in the league, which isn't something we were really talking a lot about entering the season. In fact, I think some of us felt like that could be the potential weakness of this defense is if Mosley takes a step back from the age and the athleticism and Quincy still makes some of the mistakes that he had been making in terms of filling gaps and just kind of the other, you'd have a big explosive play and then a big letdown of a play. I think we kind of felt like, and then they let Quan Alexander walk in free agency and they're going to replace him with Jamie and Sherwood. So we were kind of worried about the linebackers, but like you said, I think it's best linebacking duo in football. And Sherwood, he had a couple of nice plays today as well. Yesterday.
Yeah. And Quincy, like, legitimately, I agree with you. I think he's right up there in that, give it to Fred Warner, of course, just because of what he's been able to build up over the years. But, I mean, he's in that conversation as the best linebacker this year. I mean, the numbers are there, but just watching him, it's the efficiency that he plays with that he hasn't played with in the past because he's always had the tools. But it was just, the big plays would come at the cost of a couple missed plays. But now it's like it feels like every time he's coming downhill to make a play, whether it's in coverage in the flat or if he's going through the gaps to make a run stop, that pursuit angle is always on point. The timing is on point. It feels like everything he does is just really calculated and precise. And so you couple that with the tools that he has, that's how you get a superstar linebacker because he can get from point A to point B faster than everyone else, but it's, can you time it well? Can you have the right angle to be able to make the play rather than, taking yourself out of the play too fast? Because sometimes when you're fast, it just means you take yourself out of the play faster than anyone else. But now he's making the plays faster than anyone else. So that's the biggest thing. He's the most total stops among linebackers. So those are tackles that are, actual quality tackles. So, we're taking out like 20 yards down the field or you gave up a first down. Things like that. Tackles short of the sticks that are a win for the defense. He has the most of those in the league. His missed tackle rate, he only has 4 missed tackles the whole season. Jeez. So with all the tackles he's made, that's great for any player, but for Quincy Williams, who's missed a lot of tackles in his career, that is such a massive improvement. And in coverage, he's only given up 7 yards per reception, which is one of the top rates for linebackers. So in all facets, he's taken such huge leaps this year. He's playing awesome football. And I think Mosley's been I will say better than last year. I think he's been more consistent, and he had a good year last year. But I think he's getting closer to being like the star version of Mosley, which you didn't really expect. You would figure he'd be more likely to go down at this point. But I think he's been really consistent. He made the big punch out in this game with the fumble. He had another play in coverage where he forced an incompletion. So the linebackers have been great, and then Sherwood had a huge play late in this game too. It was very subtle, but a big play in the moment. The play before Tony Adams made that interception, the 2nd and 9 play, they stuffed, I think it was Swift, for 1 yard. So to set that play up, make an up passing situation, have the interception. Sherwood on that play was put in a tough spot. He could have, there's a pulling guard or center, I forget who it was, but someone was pulling. He could have shot inside, tried to make the play himself, and then just let the runner get free. But he stayed disciplined. He took on the block, strung it out to the edge, forced the runner back inside, and there was Quincy with the big play coming from behind. So again, that's just a testament to coaching. The fact that they have everyone, whether you're the star of the team, a starter, or if you're just a backup, everyone's ready to execute their role on this defense, it feels like. So Sherwood has not played a lot in that role this year. They've, used that third linebacker much less than they did with Quan. They've been doing more 3 safety instead, but I feel like when Sherwood's played, he's done a nice job, and he came up big in a huge spot there to set up the biggest play of the game. So that was a really sneaky key play from Sherwood there. But the linebacker play has been awesome for sure. And then Tony Adams, talk about Tony Adams. I mean,
Sure.
interception, not the hardest interception of all time, but you give him credit for, being there, making that play, of course. But even in addition to that, he had a great game. The Eagles are trying to make plays downfield, exploit this Jets secondary with their losses, but he was right in the middle of all that good coverage, being in the right place at the right time, passing things off, and that was the only time he got targeted the whole game. Out of he played every single defensive snap, so he was holding his own. He didn't miss any tackles. He had 6 tackles. He had a tackle for a loss in the run game. It didn't end up mattering, but he had a really good chase down on A.J. Brown on that big reception that he made.
Yeah.
So really good game for Tony Adams. I mean, first 3 games he made some mistakes, but it's important to remember this is a guy who, he won the starting free safety job, but second year, he only played 2 games last year, really. Only 3 starts at the beginning of this year. He's a young player. He needs some time. So some growing pains early, but this game was, I think, a very good example of what the Jets saw in him to, put their chips in on him as the starter, despite, him being so young. He didn't even really have to compete for this job. But this is what they saw to, make him the starter. The speed, the recognition, really good closing ability as a tackler. So
and all
levels, the defense was so good.
You left him out. I think Whitehead deserves a lot of credit too. He still makes some mistakes, sure, but he's, I think, objectively way better than he was last year. I mean, obviously, the first game of the season, balling out with the 3 interceptions. He's had a few miscommunications in the Dallas and the New England games, but I mean, especially the last drive of this game, he made 2 unbelievable plays to close out the Jets' win. He almost forced a fumble on Swift's touchdown catch. Feels like Whitehead, I'm noticing him a lot more. It was a touchdown, though. It was a touchdown, yes, but he does.
I don't know. This is one I might disagree with. I might disagree with this one.
You disagree with me on Whitehead? You're not going to give him props for the 2 plays.
Oh, the last 2 plays for sure. Awesome. Especially the third down one. I posted the all 22 view of that. It's even more impressive than the broadcast looked. I mean, he came from way back to close that one. So those are great plays. But I mean, I think outside of that first game, he has been involved in a lot of those coverage busts, like both of the big touchdowns to the tight ends. I think he's missed a lot of tackles. I don't know. I think he's been kind of back to last year version outside of that first game. I give him credit.
You're 2 in the no.
Defense is playing good. It doesn't mean every single player.
I'm not saying he's a superstar, but I think he's made some big plays, and he put the stamp on that victory on Sunday in a big spot. So I'm giving him flowers.
The last 2 plays definitely, I think, were great. I'm just saying overall,
you're not going to have an all pro at every single position
in these last few games.
Yeah, but you're not going to have an all pro at every position. You're just trying to find guys.
I don't think he's. I'm not asking for all pro, but
would you say he's a good safety?
Similar to last year's Whitehead outside the Bills game.
Where would you rank him amongst? I know
below average starter.
You below average starter? I disagree with that. I think he's at least average with turnover upside. He makes mistakes.
The play you mentioned, the touchdown, was like, I know it was a hard hit, but if he came in and tried to wrap up, he could have stopped it. But he put his shoulder down, tried to make a big hit, and then he missed the tackle and he scored.
All right. Well, I guess agree to disagree on Whitehead. I have not watched the all 22 from this game like you have, so I guess you have a different. You have the premier all 22. You get it a day before us, but I'll keep an eye out for Whitehead. We'll talk about it a little bit more in the pod later this week, which I guess we'll have bye week stuff. So maybe we'll do a mailbag. There's a few like long-term Jet stuff that I've wanted to talk about, but I've been saving it to talk about during the bye week. First of which is extending Bryce Huff. How could the Jets do that? There is a way for them to do it. I mean, outside of they could just pay him and figure it out later. But, Huff and Becton, we'll talk about this later, but Huff and Becton are like 2 guys who are going to want big contracts after the year. You have this year's a bit of we'll see what it is, but This year was supposed to be going all in with the Super Bowl and Aaron Rodgers, and granted, the guy's walking with no crutches already. So maybe this year will be the magical year we all thought it was going to be. But you've got contracts for Sauce and Garrett and Jermaine Johnson and Brees looming, paying Becton and Huff. I don't know. It's questionable, but there is a way for the Jets to do that and still remain cap smart. So we could talk about that during the bye week pod.
But Huff, quickly, we got to discuss Huff. I mean, barely even touched on him, and he's probably like their best defensive player right now.
He's a star edge rusher, man. I mean, the Jets finally have a star pass rusher. I mean, it's unbelievable.
They're doing it exactly what I was asking for. I said, hey, like after the Patriots game, let this guy play more snaps. He's not that bad against the run. And then
you're a genius.
3 games in a row.
It's no other
he plays. His snap rate goes up because he's playing more early down snaps. And 3 games in a row, what does he do? Career high 7 pressures against Kansas City. Beats it. Career high 8 against the Broncos. 3rd in the league among edge rushers in pressures. And he's 55th still in pass rush snaps. So he's first in pressure rate, obviously, with that disparity. 30% of the time he's creating pressure. He's on the field for a pass rush snap. I mean, he has been out of this world. So
this
it's
Jets
at the point where he's like, I was thinking about this earlier. If they announced today they signed Bryce Huff to 5 years, $150 million, fully guaranteed, would I be that mad? I don't think I'd be that mad.
Am
I crazy?
It's a big contract to give out. All right, we'll get into the contract stuff during the bye. But yeah, I mean, Bryce Huff deserves all the credit in the world. And look, this Jets defense, I think through the first 3 weeks, we were talking about, are they maybe a little overrated considering we were getting comparisons to the 85 Bears and the 2013 Seahawks. And I think the last few weeks they've shown, no, they're not overrated. I mean, look, we have to see it throughout an entire season, but what they did to the Bills on opening night, what they did to Patrick Mahomes on Sunday Night Football, and granted, they should have had 3 interceptions on Mahomes and potentially had a chance to win that game. What they've done to the Eagles, I mean, all 3 of those performances against 3 of the best offenses in the NFL, and they've dominated them. I mean, as Salah said, they've embarrassed. Really, the only game that they didn't play well in was Dallas, and even in that one, they did tighten it up in the second half again with those in-game adjustments. The Patriots game, they allowed 1 touchdown on a broken play where Quinnen was out of the game, and besides that, lockdown. I mean, they've been as advertised, I guess, at the bye week. I mean, if you were to tell me that they would have 4 interceptions or 4 turnovers of Josh Allen week 1, should have been 3 interceptions of Mahomes on Sunday Night Football, 4 turnovers against the Eagles, and honestly could have been 5 because that last play. I mean, this defense has lived up to the expectations we thought they would.
Right. I think the biggest feather in their cap right now the quality, the competition, like you said, because that's the biggest criticism last year is, who did you stop? Other than Josh Allen in those 2 games, it was, to be fair, a lot of, subpar offenses and backup quarterbacks. But exactly, Jacoby Brissett, Denver, they had to play, what was his name? Brett Rippon, Kenny Pickett was in there. Trevor Siemian, currently on the Jets. So that was the criticism last year. Now this year, some numbers might not be as high as last year in terms of like overall stuff, but then you consider who they're playing and how they made each of those teams look. That's what's really impressive. So now you project going forward. Now you got some more favorable matchups on your schedule. You got the Giants coming up 2 weeks after that. You got maybe Brian Hoyer and the Raiders. Now they'll have more opportunities to flex how dominant they could truly be when they're in favorable positions instead of like, here's Jalen Hurts, here's Patrick Mahomes, here's Josh Allen. Just bang, bang, bang in a row. And they're making all these guys, it's crazy that there have been all these turnovers in these games against the Bills, Chiefs, Eagles, and Zach Wilson's responsible for only 1 pick in those 3 games out of the 9 that were thrown in those 3 games. So that's the biggest thing with the defense is they've been up to the challenge against these great offenses and great quarterbacks. But another thing is they're taking the ball away. That's something they didn't do last year. They've got 13 this year, 13 takeaways. They had 16 last year, the whole season. So that's up. They're doing a better job catching interceptions, not a lot of dropped picks. I wish Sauce had that one against the Cowboys, but outside of that, they've been catching everything. And the fumble recoveries are up. Which is,
I forgot about that.
Mostly luck, part skill, but they've recovered 56% of opponent fumbles this year. Last year, I forget what it was, but it was somewhere around 20%. It was ridiculous. So partially luck, but that's up, and they're creating more of those opportunities. So yeah, the defense, it's had its ups and downs. Pass rush at times hasn't been as good. The starts of the game have been shaky. Pretty much every game they've given up multiple touchdowns, been down 10, but second half clampdowns have been out of this world. The second half 2023 Jets defense you can put up with any defense in football of all time. I would say just second half.
All right, 6 weeks through.
It's pretty legitimate. One touchdown, 6 games. I don't know.
And they've played the tough schedule. You're right. Prescott's really the only one that's got them. And even he in the second half really didn't do too much. Yeah, this is a big win. I mean, this is a big win for I tried to emotionally detach myself from this one entering because I was like, all right, no sauce. It's the toughest matchup. They're going to lose. They'll be 2-4 at the bye. That sucks. But with the Rodgers injury, they have some winnable games coming out of it. They can get their season back on track. But then again, if you lose a dumb game to the Raiders or you lose, we said it, like you always lose games. Every season you have games that you should win that you lose, and you have games that you should lose that you should win. And that Pats game was looming large because I was like, that is definitely a game they should have won, and they lost it. And the way to make up for it is winning a game you should lose, and this is that. And I think this was just a big win for the morale of the locker room and to proving that they can hang with anybody, and not just the moral victory of like, oh, well, we hung with another Super Bowl team. We're right there with them. To actually beat them, I think that'll give them a ton of confidence heading into this middle part of their season in terms of what this team could be. They could go on a run, win a couple games here, and be 5-4, 6-3, heading back up to Buffalo and a team that they've had 3 good performances against. I mean, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. We'll take it week by week. Injuries will happen. The Jets, again, could lose another game that they shouldn't. But I think this game was just big for the entire organization to prove really what they've been saying.
Buffalo, by the way, very, very beatable.
Buffalo's
obviously
beatable.
The Jets beat them, but I mean, look at
that Miami game on Black Friday could be huge. If the Jets take care of business these next few weeks, it could be a massive game between maybe the best offense versus the best defense. I mean, we'll see. We don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but this is just a big game for the organization and for the locker room and to keep their season afloat and more than afloat. I mean, 3-3 through the toughest part of the schedule. I mean, I think that's really what we were hoping for, was maybe 4-2, 3-3. And with Aaron Rodgers, I think this team's 5-1. So just honestly, I wasn't expecting a win. I will give you credit though, Michael. You did predict the win on the preview pod. So hats off to you for that.
They'd win by 6. Didn't I say 33?
I'd have to look.
Right.
I'd have to look. Let's talk about the offense though, and then we'll get out of here. Zach Wilson, 3 games in a row where he's looked like an NFL quarterback. Took some sacks, probably left some plays out there. Wasn't perfect, but he's playing within the rhythm of the offense. His accuracy has been a lot better. Mentally, he seems to know where to go with the football. And less I'm feeling nervous every time he takes a snap. The first 2 years of his career, he could not play within the rhythm of the offense. Take the snap, and it would, his back foot would hit. He'd still have the ball. He'd take his eyes off the secondary and look at the pass rush. He'd be running around. Disasters would happen. That's not happening. He's stepping up into the pocket. Yeah, he got sacked a few times. I'm sure once I watch the L22, I'll find some open receivers. But he had a number of nice plays in this game that will go unheralded, either because the Jets didn't capitalize on that same drive. Like he had the nice deep bomb out of the shadow of their own end zone to Garrett Wilson, which was a nice throw. And he talked about giving Garrett more of those 50-50 balls, which he did in this game. He left one in the red zone a little high for Garrett, but I love that throw. That was awesome. The 2-point conversion was a ballsy throw and displays that arm talent that we've been talking about, the ability to even make that throw. That he had that little flip to Breece Hall, which was awesome. And there's a number of throws, even just the routine slants, digs, stuff 5-10 yards down the field, which, yeah, are we babying him a little bit? Sure, but that's stuff he wasn't doing last year. And we've said it. We just want to get 20th to 24th ranked quarterback play. And after that New England game, there was a lot of noise about, well, just put Simeon in there because Simeon can at least give you something. Can give you some competent level of quarterback play. And Zach is proving that can be him, that he can do that. We'll see if he can take further steps, but I'm at least happy with the progress that we've seen from Zach Wilson. All things considered, considering what he looked like at the end of last year, considering getting thrown into the fire, having his back against the wall, heading into week 4. These last 3 weeks, he's starting to put it together. And we'll see if he can ride this confidence into the bye against some softer defenses. We'll see where he can take it. See if he can start to stack together more of those good games. This game, I think he was fine. I'd have to watch the L-22 to really get a sense on how well I thought he played, but he managed the game. He did what we've been asking him to do, and that's really what it comes down to. So, Michael, what did you make of Zach Wilson's performance?
Yeah, I think he was okay, and that's pretty much all we're hoping for at this point. I'd probably put the Denver game over this one because I feel like there were more impressive plays in that one. Because he had a few really, really good plays in that game, and this one, not a ton that really stood out. But at the same time, I think what's
deep ball to
more
get.
important.
Come on, what are you talking about?
That was more catch than throw. It was good.
That was a perfect throw. What are you talking about?
That was perfect.
In between the corner and the
perfect
safety?
to Garrett Wilson.
Yes.
He had to come back over his head.
He didn't have to come back over his head. Well, it was a tight window. I mean, there was a deep safety hovering right over the area. It wasn't like it was a one-on-one.
It was
You're
solid.
what? I mean, we've been said we're not asking him to be Mahomes.
In what world is that a perfect throw? In what world is that a perfect throw?
The fact that it was completed. He put it right between the corner and the safety, 40 yards down the field, right at the sideline. Garrett had a high point for it, but it wasn't like he had to really go back for it.
He mossed the guy. He came back. And
yeah, but that's still what would be a perfect throw? What would be a perfect throw in that situation in your eyes?
I have to look at it again, but
yeah, you're talking. Right. What are you? Go look at the play. Tell me that's not a perfect throw.
It's okay. It's an okay.
That's an okay throw. Michael,
gave his guy a shot.
You're being too.
The people agree with me on this one.
No, not rewatch the play right now. Rewatch the play.
I can't find the video of it.
Maybe open up the highlights. Maybe it could have been like another foot in front of him. But if you think the
catch is that great, how is the throw good? Because the reason
that doesn't make any sense.
That he's overcome. Yes, it does. The reason the catch is good
sometimes
is because he's overcoming the fact that the throw was not.
No, that's not true at all. It was just a tough situation. It was tight coverage. That does it as no.
I didn't say it was bad. I'm just saying it's a 50-50 ball.
Week one, the throw that he had to Garrett Wilson was a bad throw and a tremendous catch. This was a good throw. Maybe I shouldn't have said perfect. I'll extend an olive branch. This was a good throw and a perfect catch. Tight coverage. Where is he supposed to put that ball? Maybe another foot.
Again. Look at this again. Garrett Wilson is literally facing back towards the end zone when he catches the ball.
Hold on.
How is that a good throw on a vertical route?
You don't think it's a good throw?
It's okay. I said it's okay. It's not bad.
Okay.
There's no safety over the top. It's just vertical. He underthrew it, and Garrett Wilson made a ridiculous catch.
I have to watch 2 15-second ads, so I'm going to need you to expound here before I can rewatch the play. My computer's completely frozen.
But whatever. The main point is the fact that I don't really think it was too flashy, but he was consistent. He didn't turn the ball over again.
What about the 2-point conversion?
Was it? Well, that was great. Obviously, that was probably the best throw of the game. Didn't really matter that much, but there's more so the fact that he didn't make any big mistakes, no turnovers.
The free play was flat. I mean, he gets him with the turnover. Gets him with the hard count.
All right. How much do we want to gas up the 186?
You're not gonna.
Points,
yeah, but that was a. But Lazard's stupid block and penalty, which I don't even really think was a penalty, but whatever. I mean, if you go back,
that's it.
You're not going to give him any credit for that hard count, free play, gets it to Garrett, gain of 40 yards or whatever.
Yes, there's credit for that. I don't know what more you want me to say. It was okay overall.
You're a hater.
Okay.
That's all right. You're a hater. I'm not saying he's, Come on. You don't think this is a good throw? Are you kidding me?
No. Good is an exaggeration.
You're out of your mind.
He found the one-on-one. He threw up a 50-50, and Garrett made the catch. That's it.
Yeah. He wasn't doing that his entire career. I'm sorry, dude. It could have maybe been a foot.
That doesn't make it good.
There's a safety in a corner right there. I mean, that's a tight window throw. That's a big baller throw with a guy bearing down on him in his own end zone. You're not going to give him his flowers for that throw? Looks like Aaron Rodgers with that little release.
Maybe like one flower, like a little.
If he puts it he probably could have put it maybe a yard in front of him, but if he does that, maybe he gets blown up by the safety. I agree. Maybe a little hyperbolic say perfect, but if you're not going to say that's a good throw, Michael, I don't know what you're watching. That's crazy talk. Come on now. Come on. It looks like, look at that little release.
If he doesn't make the most ridiculous catch of all time, would you say it was good?
You think that's the most ridiculous catch of all? Get out of here.
That's hyperbolic. An outstanding catch. Would you say that was a good throw?
Yes.
All right. I disagree.
I don't know what you're watching. All right, let us know what you think. I mean, probably better catch than better throw, but to say that's not a good. All right, we're getting caught in the weeds here. What else did you make of his performance? Fine, is what you're saying. You think Denver was flashier? I think he had as many flash plays in this game, but similar. Took some bad sacks. He at least took care of the ball better than he did against Denver. I mean, had some of those fumbles. None of them were lost against Denver, but he took some big sacks and big shots in this one, and he hung on to the ball. So I think,
that's what I'm saying. He had no fumbles, which he had the 2 fumbles last week. No, not only no interceptions, but I don't think anything was really close. There was the one to Cobb, but Cobb's got to catch the ball if he's a veteran savvy guy with the reliable hands. But he took care of the ball. I think a lot of the plays that stalled out in the red zone, after looking at some of the all 22, I don't think he missed that much in terms of things being open. A lot of it was just Hackett's concepts not working. So I think Hackett's, Mr. Gold Zone needs to be a little more effective with his play calling down there, because a lot of it, and it's not even like poor separation. A lot of it is just like what he's calling is getting beat by the defensive coverage, and there's nothing there. And then the pass protection, I think, was not great in the second half. First half, I think, was okay. Second half, there were definitely a lot of untimely losses. Like there were some good pockets in this game, but there was also, Becton had a sack given up. Mitchell had one, and Becton, I think, was good for the most part. But there are definitely a lot of plays where it was like, if one guy could have just held up a little bit longer, maybe something good would have happened. So pass protection a little shaky. So I don't really think Zach Wilson left a ton on the field in this game. So I think he had a solid game. I'll say that there, solid game.
Hater.
And also with Hackett, I think he did what we were begging for the whole week. A lot of first down passing. They threw on 70% of their first downs, which was credit to them. That's exactly what we wanted them to do, and it was decent success. I think it was about 65% completions, about 5.2 yards per play. So you take that first down. It's a good way to start our drives off. But second down is where they really had a ton of problems. They were under 3 yards per play in second down, ton of penalties, lost plays. And that was the problem on third down, because almost half of them were more than 13 yards to go. 6 out of 13 third downs, at least 13 yards to go. So yeah, third down is a problem, but a lot of times the third down was stopped before they even got to third down. So second down was the biggest issue in this game.
Yeah, no, and I think, we can focus on the offensive line for a little bit. Obviously, Schweitzer replaced Tippmann. How do you feel like he performed? I think he gave up a sack later in the game. He did have a penalty that stalled out a red zone drive. But down 2 starters, I feel like this offensive line, like you said, it wasn't perfect, but this is a pretty amazing Eagles defensive line. So all things considered, I do feel like it was a good performance. But like you said, Becton got beat for a sack. Mitchell got beat for a sack. There was pressure in his face, but, and it wasn't like they really got the run game going. But I think when you factor in that they're down 2 starters going up against maybe the best defensive line in football, didn't have Jalen Carter. I guess that's fair. I think, I'm pleased with this offensive line performance, at least compared to week 2 against Dallas.
I don't know if I would say please. Carter is out. He's like the biggest part of this pass rush. We got to raise the standards a little bit.
All right. That's fine. You have watched the L20. I have not watched the L22 from this game, so I'll lean to. But I can see that throw, and that's not a bad throw. But whatever.
I didn't say bad. I said it was okay. Can it be right down the middle? Like,
it can be good.
All right, good
no,
job.
I came your way. I initially said perfect. You're right. It could have been a little further out in front. It's a good
You're up here like 90, and you came down to 75. No, I'm just gonna stay like firm 80. At 50.
Lame. Bad.
Just because it's so shocking for us to see him complete a vertical throw. Like, we're just flipping out about it.
Did you watch the other quarterbacks that the Jets have played? I guess Hurts had the one. Hurts had the one.
That's what a good deep throw looks like.
That's a perfect. That's a perfect throw. This was a good
exactly.
Throw. He gave him a chance, and more than a chance. It wasn't like, all right, I don't want to spend too much time on this one play. The McCole Hardman storyline is bordering on hilarity at this point. The fact that Irvin Charles is playing over him. So clearly Hardman is, maybe not clearly, but it seems to me that Hardman's going to get traded at the deadline. Irvin Charles, by the way, deserves his flowers as well. Hardy was another late inactive. He's going to be out a little over a month with that hamstring injury. And he's a stud special teamer. I don't mean to say anything. Charles looking as good, if not better, in that role. So I'll be excited to see the two of them at the same time. It's no Hardy shade, but Charles picking up right where they left off. He's been awesome, and he earned himself some reps on offense, presumably for his blocking. We haven't really seen too much of him as a receiver, but what do you kind of make of their receiver usage?
I mean, it was definitely puzzling, to say the least. See that, wow, Irvin Charles is out here and Hardman can't get out here. So, I mean, Hardman played a little bit, but it was just when Garrett Wilson was out. It's very hard to explain. I feel like maybe Hackett showed Austin Powers and Goldmember to the team, and Hardman was like, I don't know, man, this isn't funny. This is a pretty bad movie. And then Hackett just immediately took him out of the offense.
Put him in the doghouse. Could be true. I think that they really value the fine detail. This is all guesswork, but I think they really value all the fine details in terms of their rub routes, their clear out routes, the blocking. And I don't know for sure, because the limited reps that Hardman has gotten, I feel like he actually has been pretty good at those details, but it must be something in practice where they feel like he's the little details that he's messing up. Or maybe they just feel like Gibson brings that jitteriness and they want to trade Hardman, and who knows? It's all guesswork at this point, but we'll see what happens at the trade deadline. You also mentioned that Ruckert almost is right behind Uzama at this point in snap counts, which is nice. He's very close to overtaking.
One fewer snap in this game, so it's getting
closer and closer to the dream. And
another thing we're getting close to is Dalvin Cook being all the way up out of here.
It's getting close.
Season low, 3 carries, 9 snaps. Every game his snap count has gone down. So we're almost there.
We're almost there. I would like to see a Banacanda. Cook gets his 3 yards and gets out of there. Although didn't he have a first down in this game?
He had like that 8-yard run up the middle.
Hey,
he had a season high in this game, 4.0 yards per carry.
Oh, so he didn't do what was required to get a jersey. He had to get how many yards?
On 3 carries, what did he need? Like 85? I think 85 yards, something like that. So I officially will not be buying a Dalvin Cook jersey.
Damn. It is your birthday tomorrow, so maybe I'll buy you a Uzama jersey instead. All right, I think
jersey. That's what I want. Although I don't want to jinx him.
What more do you think? I guess before we get out of here, watching the red zone offense. Oh, by the way, we had Rodgers on the sideline with the headset. We'll see how much input. I don't know how much input he had on the offense, but apparently he was fairly active communicating with the coaches. When you watch this red zone offense, what's really plaguing it? Is it, like they had that naked boot where Zach is just running right into Hassan Reddick? I'm trying to think of some of their red zone play calling, but what do you think the main issue is? I feel like last week they weren't aggressive enough throwing, and then this week it just seems like nothing was really either getting open and they were getting sacks and penalties.
Yeah, well, I mean, when I was watching, I think a lot of it is pretty simply, like I said, the concept's just getting out schemed by the defense. But I think one thing that they should do more of is try to score touchdowns before they get there. I feel like we don't see enough shot plays where they're just outside the red zone or even like 15-yard line. Like, we don't have to have a 15-play drive or 19 plays like the Eagles had on their first drive. We don't have to do that to score every time. Let's try and take the top off the defense. And they had some opportunities to do that. I think there were some plays where it was 2nd and 1 and they would take a free rushing first down. Yeah, there were multiple plays where they would, on 2nd and 1, take a, just, all right, we'll take that first down instead of like, okay, let's take a shot here. Because if we miss it, it's still 3rd and 1. You could run, even go for it on 4th and 1 if you want to. So I feel like they could take some more shot play opportunities. And there were some that could have happened. There was even one play that was maybe in shot territory where Breece Hall is outside and he had a one-on-one with the linebacker and he toasted him. He was wide open.
I said that on the preview call. We got to get more receiver reps for Breece Hall.
Yeah, and this showed it. Like, they put him out wide. He gets a linebacker covering him, and he's just going to run right by that guy, which is what he did. And Zach couldn't hit it. He was reading the other side of the field. He got pressured. So I don't blame Zach for not hitting it. It was just, a bad break. But at the same time, it shows, Breece can create those opportunities and should be featured on those plays. So some of it, I think you could get more big plays so you don't have to, go into the red zone, get 5-6 good plays in a row to score a touchdown. But the loss plays on early downs were huge because so many of these third downs are like 3rd and 13, and it's 3rd and 10, 3rd and 20. So it's like, how do you 3rd and 23 they had on one of these? So it's like at that point you're kind of screwed already. So they can't have like the false starts and the holdings on early downs. Those were hurting them. And then second down running was really bad. That was something that they get to second down, maybe pick up a couple yards on first down, but then second down they tried to run and not go anywhere. Now third down was pretty long. So yeah, I think second down is an issue. More shot plays outside the red zone could help you, take the load off of the red zone and not have to rely on it so much. So there are a few things, but I ultimately don't blame Zach Wilson for a lot of what happened in this game. Like when I was rewatching it, most of it was either bad pass protection, getting out schemed, or just being in an impossible situation because of a penalty. And there were some drops too. Cobb had that drop in the red zone. Then after the Lazard penalty play, they went back to Lazard and he dropped it. So that's another thing to know for Zach in this game. There were some drops, although it is balanced out by the catch that Garrett Wilson made early on that slant was pretty ridiculous.
Oh yeah,
that was a really high throw. He had another really good catch on the throw that was kind of behind him underneath. So maybe balanced out a little bit, but there were some big drops for sure. So yeah, I think overall Zach Wilson, solid game. Like not it was a decent game, I guess I would say, because he didn't do a ton that was amazing, but like not a lot of minus in this game, I would say. Even with 5 sacks, I don't think the sacks were too much on him either. Like he could have thrown a couple of them away, but it's not like I would say most of those sacks were him missing something when he should have had it. So it was an okay game.
I mean, look,
he continues to be okay with 0 picks, like they could win a lot of games playing the way they are.
He at least looks like an NFL quarterback. We're getting that 20th to 24th ranked quarterback play that we wanted. I know it's a low bar. You look like you're about to chime in here.
Let's just say this: like the last 3 games, if you combine, Philly, Denver, Kansas City, that whole body of work, if he did that all of last season, I think they beat the Lions for sure. Jaguars, I don't know. There were some other issues in that game, but I mean, what other games did he?
The Patriots both games,
definitely both games. So I think that those 3 wins you give them, both Patriots games and Detroit. So all of a sudden you're a 10-win team last year. So I think these last 3 games really starting to get the competency that you want.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. They got to be better in the red zone because, I mean, look, with this defense, maybe they'll be able to hold teams to less than 20 points every single game. But eventually, I mean, you're going to run into Miami twice. You'll get Buffalo again. Those division games are always hard. Eventually, the defense will have a game where they give up more than 20 points, where they give up 30 points, and it's can this offense stay with them? And it really comes on capitalizing the red zone and capitalizing off the defense, off the turnovers the defense gives you. And I think Zach Wilson, he's not been a good red zone quarterback in his career. He's not been a good quarterback in his career, but he's starting to make strides in the fact that they're moving the ball finally. I think when the field gets all condensed, he's worried about making a mistake, and it takes some bad sacks, and then you're in second and long, like you said. I mean, it's the sacks and penalties I feel like are the story for their red zone woes. But that's the biggest area of improvement for this offense. Is they're moving the ball. They're finally not going 3 and out every play. Zach Wilson is playing quarterback, but if you're settling for 3 every time you get in the red zone, I guess you'll win some games with this defense, but how far can you really go with that type of offense? So that's really what I want to see after the bye. We'll have a bye week podcast this week, probably doing a mailbag. So we'll put out a tweet for that, and we'll talk all the long-term Jet stuff. And then we're right back on it. So you can follow us. If you have anything else, we'll do the plugs. You can get to it after it. Follow us at TYJ Pod on Twitter. Michael_Nanny, and myself, Ben W. Blessington. Go to JetsXFactor.com. Best place to go for Jets content. Check out some of the other Jets X Factor pods. Please rate, review, subscribe on iTunes. That helps us out a ton. Michael, last thoughts.
Special teams. I mean,
all right.
There were some big losses there too. With Hardy being out, Eccles being out, Irvin Charles came in. He had a big tackle. Aguavin had a big tackle. Only give up 9 punt return yards and 3 returns.
It's
and a fair
impressive.
catch with the 7. Morstead continues to be an absolute monster. Just like he's really good. It's not just like, oh, he's good for a guy who's old. Like, no, he's one of the best in the league this year. Just he's getting distance. He's got It's not like he's out kicking the coverage. The guys are there to make the stops. He has been very good in the plus range, trying to pin teams deep at let's not just get it to the 15 or 16. Like let's put him inside the 10. He's been good at that. Almost set up another safety in this game. But Jalen Hurts was ridiculous, escaping that Huff and JJ pressure. So yeah, the special teams, I really like what they did.
Brant Boyer, baby.
I was gonna say, what'd you think of the green on white uniforms? Making their not only making their return, but first we both were thinking back to the
Wait, hold on. Here we go. I have a feeling you're about to say it, so just hold on. Here we go. I have a feeling you're about to say it. I want everybody at home. I'll give you 5 seconds to think about this. So we'll pause. When was the last time the Jets won in green on? Is it just green on white in general, right? It's not just at home.
Yeah.
Last time the Jets
won. Wait. Were there at home? We know at home. I don't think they won on the road in it. Right? No,
I don't think so. Well, originally Michael was like,
they did. There is one in there. There is a green and white road win in there. And it's one of the worst memories for Jets fans.
Oh, it's the Rams game. 2020.
Yes.
That's the last time they won? Okay, well, originally it was like, what was the last time? At home, 5 seconds, ready, 5. Can you think of it? 4, 3, 2, 1. Raiders game 2019. You know how freaking long ago that feels? You remember we got kind of hyped after that. We got kind of hyped after that. We were like, all right, well, they won 3 in a row. We can go on a run here. And then they blew up against the Bengals. Then we had the tank for Trevor. I mean, like, that's so long ago. So I just thought that was funny. I mean, I literally never wear these unis. Maybe we'll get a little bit more of
That's the last. Is that like their last classic blowout clean blowout at home? I know they had the Bears last year, but they were down in that game in the first half. They're like wire to wire, clean blowout.
Yeah, I guess so.
Either way, green and white makes its return. Thought it looked pretty good. I was saying I think the Eagles it would be better if they were all white. You're saying all black. Or not
no, the black adds another color onto the field.
Get a little, differentiation between the two teams.
You like the 425 games on the East Coast?
I mean, I've been getting used to it this year. Like something that's very rare for the Jets, but 2 weeks in a row now. Or was the Cowboys game also?
Yeah,
4:00. Yeah, so 3 times this year.
Pats game is the only 1:00 game they've had so far.
I kind of like it because I like the chance to watch because the alternative when the Jets play at 1, I'm kind of not watching those later games because then we do the podcast and I start like doing research and everything. But when they play at 4:00, I can watch those 1:00 games and then enjoy the Jets game. Well, sometimes you enjoy it. Although it is kind of late afterwards, like to do a podcast. Like,
I know we haven't done the pod. We've been doing it the next day. Well, they have,
which is contributing to that game. The 4:00.
Yeah, we have another 1 p.m. game against the Giants, a regular, and then the Chargers is Monday Night Football. The Raiders is currently Sunday Night Football.
I'm looking forward to those primetime games. I mean, primetime Jets this year has been good. I think
the Raiders. I bet the Raiders game gets flexed out to a late window game. I would imagine.
I don't know. I think that'll be teams are 500 right now. You think so?
Did Garoppolo just have a back injury or something?
He did, but they also play Chicago and the Giants before that game. So
isn't there a better game that week? What week is that? NFL schedule. Let me see. I remember looking at it and thinking like there's
that week 10 schedule.
I remember
Chargers, that's going to be a fun game. Chargers Monday night at home.
Yeah, that will be a fun game.
We'll see what the Chargers have to show tonight.
They could give it to 49ers Jaguars.
Turn of primetime MetLife. That's what they'll go with. The wristbands.
There's a 49ers Jaguars game, and there's a Lions Chargers.
Wait, which game did you say it was? 49ers Jaguars?
And Lions Chargers.
All right, we've had enough of the 49ers. They're frauds. It was pretty
Lions Chargers? Another Lions primetime game?
1 week after the Chargers were on already.
Well, it would be 1 week after the Jets were on if we were on.
The only thing is there's been a lot of Raiders already. It makes me think they might do it. They've already had 2, and there's going to be a 3rd before that game. And all of them were at the Raiders, too.
What were the 2 games?
They played Steelers Sunday night, and they played Monday night against Green Bay.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, and they play again on Monday night against Detroit next week.
Yeah, it's getting flexed out. And then we do have another late
I
window
don't
game
know.
against the
We'll
Bills.
see. I'm going to that
You're
game.
going.
So
You'd
Either
rather
way,
have
I'll
it be
be
a
there.
Sunday night game?
well, being on the
You'd
West
rather?
Coast, it's earlier, so it's not like on the East Coast where you got to
Yeah, it's
grind it out. It's like to 11 o'clock, then you try to get home. But that would be an interesting experience. I've never been to a West Coast sporting event, so for like a
wow.
quote unquote night game to be at like 5 o'clock would be interesting.
All right. I think that'll do it for us. Thank you, everybody, for listening. I don't know when do you want to do this next podcast, Michael? Friday,
don't know.
Monday? All right. Sometime in the
We'll
next week.
see.
We're
We'll see.
very organized
But
around
hey,
here.
3-3, all that.
We'll put out
Everything they've been
a
through.
tweet. We'll put out a
3-3
tweet
at
for
the
the
bye week.
mailbag.
Good to
Put out
be
a tweet for the
here.
mailbag. Thank you, everybody, for listening. 3-3 at the bye. Finally beat the Eagles. Everybody soaked this in. 2 weeks to enjoy
Look at
this.
us. Who would have
Look at
thought?
us. Who would have thought? Have a great week, everybody. Go Jets.